Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
It's Dr. Mike Patterson, your host of the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about what it takes to be a great leader and how to build a great team. I'm glad you're with us. And if you like what you hear on today's episode or any of our past episodes, please leave a review and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. It helps new people find us. Our topic today is navigating enterprise politics. Now, some of us old school folks may refer to this as office politics, but since a lot of us don't even go to the office anymore, and the fact that we're talking about power, how power is acquired and wielded at the enterprise or organizational level in many cases, let's stick with navigating enterprise politics as a better title for this episode. And fortunately, we have an expert with us who can help us figure it all out.
Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about better business results, stronger teams, more successful careers, and happier lives. Along the way, we hope to bust some biases, build some bridges, and have some fun. We're glad you're here. And now, our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
My guest today is Dr. Jawn Lam. Jawn is a scholar practitioner who has observed how people gain and wield power in the workplace for years, and now he's helping people do that. He's the founder of Durable Leadership, an organizational consulting firm that helps executives win at the game of enterprise politics. One of the reasons I like Jawn so much is because he's a Pepperdine guy. He's a Pepperdine guy through and through. He did his undergraduate MBA and doctoral work at Pepperdine University, and I can personally attest to his academic prowess because he was a student in one of my doctoral courses. Gosh, I think it was 10 years or so ago. And there are certain students you have in class where you say that person is going places, they are talented, they're all talented, but this guy I had my eye on for a long time. And Jawn, I'm just excited to welcome you to the Mission First People Always podcast.
Mike, you're too generous with your words, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you because this is a topic that has interested me for my entire career. And I've often said that I wasn't very good at office politics. And I would, bemoan to my wife that, man, if I just could play the game a little better, I could get that promotion and I'd be here and not where I am. And I don't know if that was true, but I'm interested in learning more. So let's start with some basics here. What are some common myths about office politics? What is it and what's it not? Set the record straight for us.
One of the things that I hear all too often from middle managers who want to avoid office politics is they have this misconception about the whole activity, the whole suite of activities being dark, mischievous, Machiavellian. And those terms are used absolutely as a pejorative for anybody who they see engages in office politics. But that is not the case. They see office politics as simply the actions that happen behind the scenes that are outside of ordinary policies and procedures, stated programs that are expected for behavior inside of an organization. They want people to always be transparent, and they want information to be readily available for all to act upon, but that is not the case. And it is not necessarily out of any kind of hidden motives, underhanded agendas that people hide information. It is just the nature of our complex organizations that we have information that is not always stated, information that is always going to be fuzzy. So therefore, if somebody has information to act upon, then another person will see that as being political. So office politics is not something that we should be afraid of, because you don't have to use it in a punitive or in a coercive way, although it can be done. Those types of political behaviors can be executed. It doesn't have to be. More than anything, people pull away and shy away from office politics because they see it as dark and gloomy and underhanded, to say it briefly. But it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I what comes to mind for me when we talk about office politics is kissing up to the boss.
Yeah.
Telling the boss things that may not be exactly true, but to make it seem as though you're really supportive and you think he's the smartest, best looking person and that's ever stepped in an office. And that doesn't feel good to anyone.
Right.
But how can we be more authentic and genuine and productive in the way we interact with people, knowing that power is something that many of us pursue and want to get our hands on, and information is something we pursue and want to get our hands on.
Mm-hmm.
How do we play this game in a corporate setting and make it work for us in a way that doesn't make us feel like we need to go home and take a shower at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think authenticity is key. It's something that we talk a lot about, those of us who are in the leadership development space. We talk about this thing called authenticity and being true to yourself and having these values that you espouse, right? These are well-calibrated moral compasses. And when we give flattery to the boss that we don't actually mean, and we are sycophants and we kiss butts when we don't, when everybody can tell that that's what we're doing just to get ahead and it's not sincere, that's very much icky and gross. And for the most part, although for an executive who receives that kind of false praise, it may work one or two times, but it's not going to work over the long term. The brand that I'm spinning off right now, Durable Leadership, the idea is to help middle managers and junior executives understand what it takes to have lasting influence. And being fake is not going to be viewed as something that you can maintain and sustain over the long haul. So bringing it all back into a mode of authenticity and leading from that standpoint will ensure your durability much more so than being occasionally insincere and, giving off these airs about being flattering to executives just because you want to get ahead.
Boy, I'm glad you said that, John, because I hated it when I would observe people doing that. And there were certain people who seemed to do it often. And when they did get promoted or get ahead, we would just shake our head and say, why, how could this happen? But that's not the gospel you're preaching here. You're talking about sustainable influence.
Right.
And so what are some of the things that we can do to acquire that? And I'm interested in more about how you work with clients. I know you're starting a new practice or new brand or new focus for your practice. And so I'm excited to hear exactly how you work with clients and how you add value to their both career and organization.
Yeah, I think thanks for the question. Up to this point, I think it's probably easiest for us to talk about the experience that I've had as opposed to the new transition. And the experience that I've had is up to this point when I interface with an executive to help him or her craft a strategy to accumulate more political capital and protect the power base that they already have. What we talk about is, number one, identifying the purpose for having that power. What is it that you want to see happen? If you want more power just for the sake of having power, okay, you paid us and we'll help you with that. But I'm warning you, in the long run, once you've been found out that you are just power hungry, it's not gonna end well for you. So, and very few executives in my experience that I've worked with actually have that just power hungry, power for the sake of power kind of mentality. More often than not, we first start with finding out what they want. We call that an executive vision. We define that clearly for the person. Do you want to grow your department? Do you want to expand into a new marketplace? Do you want to take the business to, I don't know, South America, Canada, whatever it is? Define that clearly. And then from that point, will help you build the right political resources to execute on that vision. It starts with the vision, though, Mike.
So there's a righteous vision that one can have, and there's the kind of vision. Would you ever? Well, you said if they pay me, I'll help them do what they do, but also advise them that the path they're taking is not sustainable. But have you ever worked with anyone that was truly a megalomaniac, narcissist, who you just felt like this is a bad relationship?
Oh yeah, I have. And those relationships, we try to manage, our team tries to manage that as expeditiously as possible to close down the contract and part ways with that client as quickly as possible. Mostly because in general, they're just a headache client. We have the opportunity to view it through the lens of organizational politics and see them as a power-hungry megalomaniac. But other people in other consulting disciplines will just see that person as a troublesome client who's too demanding, who wants things done too quickly. So we just move that along and fire them as a client as soon as we can, if we can. Otherwise, we finish the contract, get the project across the finish line, and just never reach out to them again.
Have you ever converted anyone from evil megalomaniac, power hungry leader to righteous leader who's seeking power for the good of the many?
No. And that's not what we want to do anyway. I'm not your therapist. I say this to my clients all the time. I'm not your therapist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a counselor. I'm not someone who's here to help you define your moral compass. If you have a vision and that's what you believe to be the right version of the future for your organization, I am simply here to help you obtain that and make that vision a reality. That's all. Now, sometimes, because these executives have very complex visions about how to allocate resources in their organization, which means when we're operating at complex levels of the organization, higher levels of the organization, there's always going to be conflict about how scarce resources are allocated. So whether the executive who is my client wants to move the resources in this direction and another executive wants to move it in that direction, who is morally right in that situation? I don't know, but I'm hired by this person to make that happen. That's it. So I don't try to guide them on what is right and wrong, the moral and ethical implications of doing what they do. We're just hired hands. That's all. So that's all that I do.
So as a hired hand, do you often find yourself working with clients who part of their vision means I want to get promoted? I want to become the CEO or the COO from the seat I currently sit in.
Sure.
Do you advise folks on how to get there? What does that relationship look like? Because I would think that there are a lot of folks out there who are thinking, I want to get promoted and I need some help to get there. Are you the guy to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you, this was a client that we had several years ago. So with names and company identifying markers scrubbed, I feel pretty good about sharing this story. We had a client who wanted to be VP of HR, and the current person who was sitting in that role was not going to give up that seat too easily. So our task was to help our client basically remove the person who's currently in power and get her installed. So we designed a program to help bolster her reputation and image in the eyes of the key decision makers, and at the same time highlight all the things that the other person was doing wrong in a savvy way to make sure that the CFO, the CEO, and everyone else at the C-suite understands that this person, if you keep that person in that chair any longer, you as an organization are going to suffer consequences. So it's best that you remove that person and hire my client. That's the background political strategy that we executed. How we did that tactically on the ground is trade secret that we have put together. But yeah, we've done that. We've helped people not only get promoted, but get promoted into a currently occupied seat.
And who knows about that relationship? Just you and your client in the example you just gave.
Yeah.
So is your professional responsibility solely to your client or to the organization more broadly?
We saw our obligation as delivering results for the decision maker who brought us in, not for the organization, for the executive sponsor who brought us in. And in that case, it was in all of the cases, it's the single person who brings us in, who has an idea, who wants this version of the future to become reality. We vet their ideas 6 ways from Sunday to make sure that it is viable and meaningful and does have merit for the future of the organization. Otherwise, we help them reshape that and make it even better and more palatable for the other executives who would be signing on to this new vision. But it's not for the organization. We are not there to help the organization be more profitable, run more efficiently, whatever. That is not our highest goal. Our highest goal is to help this executive, this single executive, execute on his or her vision and consolidate the power necessary to make that happen. That's our only objective.
So I would imagine that doesn't happen overnight. So how long is a typical engagement? If I'm looking at the horizon and I don't know if this ever comes up in conversation, but the CEO has just announced his or her retirement 8 months from now, and they're beginning a search process. I want to be the next CEO. When do I need to get started on the pursuit of that with someone like you?
Prior to the announcement, ideally.
Okay.
If you're the COO or you're, the VP of IT or VP of finance or something, and you want that CEO seat, you should have your ears to the ground and picking up signals, knowing that the CEO is going to retire well ahead of the actual announcement. But, surprise announcement, all of a sudden you get word that there's an opportunity. We've had clients give us a phone call and we craft something to get them the best probability of getting that role, getting hired. But that's not a guarantee. None of our projects are ever guarantees, but we just increase the probability of your vision being manifested, coming to reality.
The example of getting a promotion is easy. That's an easy call out and maybe too simple of an example. But how do you measure success in your work? If I engage you, John, and say, I want to do these things, and it's not related to a promotion, how do we know if how do I know if I'm successful and you really help me be successful?
Our conversations boil down to a binary as much as we possibly can, with the understanding that the binary is not necessarily a 50-50 probability of actually becoming a reality. Sometimes the binary is, a 60-40, a 70-30 probability of happening, with our favor being on the downside of that. And that's fine. But once we've reduced the executive vision down to a yes, no, did this happen or not, we can then execute towards that. But sometimes you're right, Mike, it doesn't really come down to whether or not I got a promotion, whether or not I've successfully got somebody else fired, whether or not I've successfully argued the case in front of my CapEx committee to get more budget for this next year, whatever it is. Sometimes it's not the case, but more often than not, our clients walk away happy because they have learned new skills in navigating the political landscape. And I tell my clients that this skill is just like playing chess. You're never going to master it. You will have a binary conclusion at the end of each game, but are you going to get better? That's our only real feeling that we're driving towards. The feeling is the fuzzy part where they feel more powerful. They feel like they understand politics a little bit better, and the scales from their eyes have fallen off, where they see things, opportunities, ways to grab resources a little bit better, where they see that a little bit better. That's when we feel like we've done our job the best. Whether or not we cross the finish line for that binary outcome is helpful, but not necessary for our personal success.
So basically, this is a transformational process that you're putting these executives through so that they don't need you for the rest of their career. And that may be bad for business if your answer is yes to that, but you're setting them up with a mindset and a skill set that they can use for the rest of their career that may serve them well for years to come when you're not on the payroll anymore. Is that what you're saying?
The coaching aspect is sort of that and sort of not. It's sort of having somebody become aware that this is a skill set that they need to grow in. That once they have that and they can go about being a lifelong learner and reading from authors like Professor Jeffrey Pfeffer up at Stanford, authors like that, they can grab onto that information themselves. By all means, go ahead. Or you can come back to us and just like great athletes like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan always have coaches beside them, even though they are top tier athletes. We are also there to help coach you. And then on the other side, on the consulting side, there will be situations that you yourself, although you're very politically savvy, do not have the capacity to have eyes and ears inside the field to uncover all the different angles that come up and identify the nuances of each political situation in the same way that no executive has the capacity to articulate all the legal nuances of every new contract, every new business relationship. And so they hire out law firms to help craft new legal strategies for them. We, as change management, org development, political strategists, are there to help the executives on one-off basis, on a project base as well.
Do you ever work with teams? You know, you mentioned increasing a department's budget, getting more resources for the coming year for a coming project that is a high priority for a particular team, but not so much another team or the organization at large at this point. Do you ever sit in a room filled with leaders on the same team pursuing that goal?
So I started out the conversation saying that the executive sponsor who brings us in is our true client.
Yep.
The organization pays for us. The executive sponsor is the person who is our real number one client, who has the final say on whether or not we roll out any feature or any program in the engagement. In that scenario, under that paradigm, we see this person as the one who is going after the central aspect of the political component. Everything else that we build around the client, for lack of a better analogy, is kind of like helping him or her, helping our core client build their own political machine in the vein of old Tammany Hall in New York.
Okay.
These kinds of political machines that we are building for the client sometimes can include training their direct reports on how to better, in giant air quotes, lead and manage. And by lead and manage, when we train that next level of our client, we are helping them identify opportunities for relationship building across the organization, reaching through and across different silos of the organization to gather intel for us and bring it back so that we can better leverage that information and advance our client's agenda. So we work with teams in that way, but never ever have we been hired by a team and consider the entire body a client.
You know, John, you are the first to ever mention Tammany Hall on the Mission First People Always podcast. So mark the tape or mark the recording there so we can capture that moment in history. You know, Tammany Hall brings to me at least some concerns about, you know, ethical implications of power in politics.
Sure.
What should we be concerned about? Should I ever, lose sleep because I'm working with you because what we're doing is a bit sketchy or shady?
We bring all of our conversations back to the executive vision and anchor all of our decisions in the executive vision. When an idea comes up by me, someone on my team, or the client, him or herself, we bring it back to the executive vision. Is this going to help us execute and make that vision a reality? Is it going to help make that a reality? And if the answer is yes, the next question is that going to be a durable way to make that vision a reality? Is that going to harm the reputation that we are trying to build for you, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, to make that vision a reality? We bring it back to that executive vision for this reason. That is our core ethos for all of our ethical decisions. And yes, you can say that we are being consequentialists in the philosophical, ethical domain and not deontologists. We're not, core value based. We are results based. And another way of saying that is that we see the world as a ends justify the means kind of mindset, but we couch that also with the awareness that just because we are ends justify means doesn't mean that any means to get to the ends will be employed, because we evaluate the means in and of themselves individually in isolation as well, and consider whether or not the means that we are about to deploy will harm our reputation and will cost us more downstream. So do my clients lose sleep? Initially, but once we re-establish connection to the executive vision, that goes away.
So in other words, you would never slander someone. You would never initiate salacious rumors to present a colleague in a negative light, or would you?
We do it only in a way that is professional. So I don't want to say no, but I don't want to say yes either, because if I say yes, some people may take that as, oh, he's going to take stories of mistresses to the newspaper. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
That we steer very clear away from that. And we advise our clients to not even think about that, because some of our clients know of, some of their colleagues who have, we'll say, extracurricular activities outside of the office. But they bring that up and they say, hey, John, can we use this information? I said, how? Sure, you can use it, but is that going to better your reputation? Is that going to harm the way that you look to the rest of the organization downstream? And if the answer is yes, then obviously we don't do it. If the answer is no, because we can properly conceal it, then we say, well, what guarantees do you have to make that activity completely hidden and obscured from anybody else who may investigate in the future? Very little. So why even talk about that? There's 1,000 other ways that we can pursue sidelining and marginalizing that other individual without dipping into their personal life. We can talk about that other person's professional contribution and highlight how their ineptitude or their abuse of power or their reluctance to use their authority, all of these other ways we can, you use the term slander, Mike, but that's not what we actually do. We highlight the cost of keeping that other person in place. That's what we do. But we do not dabble in bringing personal information into the workspace.
Do you ever have to conceal some of the bad stuff that your clients have done in order to help them achieve their executive vision? And as you were describing, in your response, it made sense. You mentioned extracurricular activities. What if your client is guilty of some of those things that they don't want others to know, or maybe there's a rumor going around? And do they make you aware of that stuff? And do you have to, try to fix some of the damage that they've already done? I that's fascinating to me. Because there's some leaders who have not been on their best behavior at all times.
Yeah. Had a client who wanted the promotion to get to the next level, but unfortunately in the past had been accused of some SH misbehavior. For those who are unfamiliar, sorry for the acronym, that's sexual harassment misbehavior of other employees. So that does happen. If we're worried about that spilling out into the public, then I will bring on some friends from the PR world to help handle that. I don't handle that. I don't know what to do with that. But inside of the organization, if my client wants to get to the next level and has, a less than stellar reputation legally there, what we do is design a program to highlight, in this case, his contributions to the organization and identify how moving him into that other position will be of benefit to the entire organization.
Many of my listeners are, I'm sure they're fascinated by this conversation, because I am. I never really thought much about people like you, John, who can come in and help people achieve their vision by crafting a very intentional plan to do that. But did things change when you get into a smaller business, maybe a family-owned business? It seems like the scenarios you're describing are in very large organizations, Fortune 500, or bigger kind of companies, or higher up on lower numbers in the Fortune 500 kind of big businesses, big enterprises. Does this stuff apply in the 100-person organization, the 50-person organization? And if so, how so?
My professional thesis that I operate on a day in and day out basis is that power dynamics exists at all levels, wherever there are two people in a social interaction. There's always going to be a power dynamic. Now, the mechanisms that are available for deployment to control the situation vary, right? Between two individuals, the mechanisms for controlling the situation include things like interpersonal negotiation tactics, charm, charisma, all of these interpersonal dynamics that are outside of bureaucratic norms, outside of bureaucratic procedures. At larger institutions, my clients, by the way, Mike, are organizations that are of 1,000 to 2,000 in headcount. Okay. And that is my sweet spot. And again, that's not to say that power dynamics do not exist in organizations of 3 digits, 2 digits, or just a couple of dozen people. They do. But the mechanisms available for us as consultants to engage and deploy, and the levers that we can get our hands on to control are fewer, and they're not mechanistic. They're not like predictable in a way that moving pieces on the chessboard at larger institutions procedurally by policy can be predictable for us. The interpersonal stuff, charisma, that kind of negotiation tactics, we can help a person grow in that, but that's not our specialty. But to answer your question directly, power dynamics exists in all relationships.
So we're beginning our descent toward landing this podcast plane today. What's it take to win in enterprise politics? You've opened my eyes to a lot that's going on here and could go on behind the scenes, and how you can help people make good things happen. But what's a general statement you can offer in terms of how do you win at this political game at work?
I'll give you 3. 1, 2, and 3. A, B, and C. We'll make it easy. Number 1, have a crystal clear executive vision, well articulated in a way that defines what you want and defines what you don't want, so that you can easily pitch that to anyone at any time. The elevator pitch of your executive vision. Define that and hold that in your mind every single day, because that filters all other decisions. Number 2, build and nurture relationships. That is absolutely critical, because it's from relationships that you get, number 3, the opportunity to connect the dots to get more resources. Number 3 is always be vigilant to connecting the dots and getting more resources. And that is not more resources for yourself necessarily. Delivering resources to other people to nurture and build those relationships will help you get more relationships and resources to execute on your executive vision.
You know, I often say, and you've maybe heard others say this as well, John, it almost always comes down to relationships.
100%.
And it seems like the world you're in, that holds true there as well.
That is absolutely right.
So, John, I'm sure there's some people out there whose eyes are also opened today to the possibility of getting some help navigating this world of enterprise politics, and maybe you're the guy to help them. So how can folks get in touch with you? We're going to have all this in the show notes, but just give them a chance to hear directly from you. How would you like to hear from people, and what would that first interaction be like for them?
You know, I'm excited for this opportunity to take our practice and help individuals who want to learn more about this, because I believe in the core of my being that if everyone in the organization is aware of political dynamics, it doesn't have to be something said in hushed tones anymore. And the organization can actually be healthier if everyone is aware of how politics works. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, the best way is to follow our page, the Durable Leadership page on LinkedIn. That's the best and easiest way to connect with us.
Excellent. John, thanks for being a great guest. I've loved this conversation. I've loved catching up with you. Friends, that's about all the time we have for this episode, but here's what I've learned. Politics, the acquisition and exercise of power, has been around since, well, forever. And to wish for a politics-free workplace is an exercise in futility. But as you just heard our guest say, we can actually have healthier organizations if we all understand how politics works. And if our executive vision is indeed righteous and we're thinking about what's best for the organization, we're actually leading in a healthy way to get there. And so our guest has given us some important insights. And as a reminder to folks, people and performance always go hand in hand. Better business results often boil down to better relationships. And you can't have better results without relationships. So let's take a balanced approach and achieve extraordinary results. And we'll tell you just how to do that on this and future episodes and past episodes of the Mission First People Always podcast. So don't forget to hit subscribe or follow, leave a good review, tell a friend, and come back to listen to every episode. And until next time, go out and do great things.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.